On today's episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast, we are continuing our deep dive into some of the upcoming prospects in the upcoming NBA draft. Today, we're talking about Chet Holmgren. Should the Pistons take him? What's some strengths? What's some weaknesses? We'll talk about that in today's episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast.
You are Locked On Pistons, your daily Detroit Pistons podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's the deal? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast. Per usual, I am your host, Kuka Hill. You can find me over on Twitter at Kuka Hill. I want to thank you guys for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We are free and available on all your podcast platforms. And if you haven't already, head to our YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button. We're on our road to 3,000 subscribers, continuing to show Locked On. We are the best and fastest growing fan base at the Locked On Network. So again, best way to support the podcast, hit that subscribe button over at the Locked On Pistons YouTube channel. I'd really appreciate it. Today, we're going to be talking about some Chet Holmgren, diving into some of his tape, what I saw from him, and whether the Pistons should take him, what's some of his strengths, some of his weaknesses. We'll talk about all of that. And just like last episode when we talked about Paolo Banchero, we're bringing friend of the podcast, Hal, on to talk about some Chet. Hal, you ready to talk about some Chet, man? You a big fan?
I'm ready.
Ready. You know, the last episode went pretty smooth. I was worried about it heading, and everyone knows that, but it actually went pretty smooth. I think it will be just as smooth today. So
you did just fine.
I thank you. I appreciate that coming from the draft master himself, Hal. So it has to be.
I didn't have to DM him anything afterwards, being like, I can't believe you just made me agree to that on the podcast. So as long as that doesn't happen, we're good.
Exactly. All right. So just like last time, we'll start off with some strengths, his weaknesses, and then we'll talk about whether the Pistons should or should not draft him. But first, obviously, we have to give like a basic background of Chet Holmgren. This past season, he averaged 14.1 points a game, 9.9 rebounds, 1.9 assists, 3.7 blocks, 60.7 field goal percentage, shot 39% from deep, and had a true shooting percentage of 69.1%. He is listed at 7 feet tall, has a wingspan of 7'6". He will be 20 years old at the time of the draft. He weighs, and make sure you guys keep track of this because this will definitely be something we talk about later on. His weight is 195 pounds, and he went to Gonzaga. So we're going to start this off with one sentence to describe Chet Holmgren. My one sentence is a potential superstar with one glaring and scary weakness that could hold him down. Hal, what would be your one sentence? Hal was freaking out about having one sentence before the podcast.
Well, you dropped the one sentence thing on me, and I was trying to think. I couldn't come up with anything clever. It's like a defensive superstar with offensive utility, right? That's what Chet is.
All right, fair enough. So let's go ahead and get straight into his strengths now. So right off the top, from when I was watching him and was getting my notes down, first thing that jumped off the page instantly. And by the way, I didn't know until like not a few weeks ago, but a few months ago, that Chet was the guy who like crossed up Steph Curry at like that. What was it, like a camp or something? Some like YMCA game or something. I didn't know that was Chet. I did not know that until like literally just a few months ago. But
yeah, he's got quite a bit of tape on him from the high school days, and a lot of it's pretty fun.
Fair enough. So first strength that jumps off the board instantly, he's an insane shot blocker. He knows how to use his length. He knows how to use his height. He has incredible instincts. He knows when to jump. He knows how to leverage his body against guys. And that kind of makes up, at least in the college level, from what I saw, that made up for his lack of strength that he had against guys. He knew how to leverage his body. Even though he only weighs, like I said, 195 pounds, he was really good at knowing how to time shots, knowing how to use his length, and knowing how to position himself to swat just about anything that came around the rim. We're gonna take turns here because I know last time I talked a lot for the entire first segment and didn't really give Hal a chance. So that's my one strength, real quick. Hal, what do you have to say going next?
Yeah, it's the same thing, right? He is a real genius level guy when it comes to understanding like how to initiate contact, right? Because we're going to talk a lot about his frame throughout the pod, but the one thing that always stands out to me, it's like in boxing, right? You use your jab, right, to set up space, and then it's when you go into the clinch to protect yourself. And he is so good at using his hands to engage with guys as they come into his body, and like he never absorbs contact. He doesn't, or he never he never gets like uprooted by contact because he just moves his feet, and as soon as you plant yourself, he gets into you with his body and he's leering over you, and you're not finishing over that once he's set up in position. And that ability to just figure out when to like set himself is so vital. And we've seen him go up against guys like Jalen Duren, who you'll probably end up talking about at some point in time on the pod, a 6'10", 250-pound brute that's probably going to be a top 10 pick this year. Jalen Duren couldn't move him. And it's not because Jalen Duren isn't like obscenely strong and way stronger than Chet. It's because Chet is so good at knowing when to finally sit down and take the contact and start to leer over you. And like, if it weren't for the fact that we just watched Evan Mobley be Evan Mobley for a year, I'd say he's the best defensive prospect I've ever seen in college. Mobley's maybe just a little bit more fluid of an athlete and a little more switchable, but Chet's incredible, and it's all because of how good his feel is for that space right around the rim.
Yeah, and that was something else I wrote in my notes right here, is that he was extremely nimble and comfortable moving his feet. From what I saw, and obviously I looked at some other people's draft notes and draft reports on him, he should be able to run just about any pick and roll coverage you'd like him to run at the next level. Drop coverage, he seems to be pretty good at blitzing. He can move his feet and recover very quickly. He doesn't have any problems with that. It's not something that he's just uncomfortable doing. He's openly and willingly able to do something like that. I think he could handle himself switching on the guards. Not something you probably want him doing all the time, but I think he could handle it when he does switch on the guards and not get absolutely made fun of if he had to do it. And truly, just another thing I wrote in my notes, just straight up, I said this dude truly is one of the best defenders possibly we've ever seen coming into the draft. He had, like Hal said, he knows how to utilize his body around the rim. He's very fast, or I won't say very fast, but very quick on his feet, knows how to move around as a big guy. Probably helps the fact that he's 195 and not like 300 pounds or anything, but he's able to move around, block shots, impact the game in multiple different levels on defense, knows how to utilize his hands, like you said, Hal. So really just overall defensively, a defensive monster overall, just straight up a defensive monster. And move over to his offense real quick. Excuse me. Something I wanted, I didn't, this was at the very beginning of my notes, but I didn't want to say it yet because I wanted to wait till his offense. He shot 73% on all 2-pointers. Like, does everyone understand just how insane that is?
It's pretty crazy.
70.
He didn't miss a dunk all year.
Yeah,
didn't miss a dunk
on all 2-pointers. That is absurd. That's wild. So, again, I'm trying not to talk about the major weakness that I'm scared about for him, but you can't really. I have to mention it. Like, you think for a guy his size with that skinny and not that strong and that kind of frame, he would get knocked around a lot, and he would, not be able to really fight through contact or finish around the rim and those kind of things. That's it's the complete opposite. He can finish with both hands around the rim. He's incredibly comfortable trying to get to the rim himself. He, on multiple occasions, can go full court off a defensive rebound, just taking himself all the way to the rim. He's very comfortable with the ball in his hands, can finish around the rim, and really just has potential to have just a complete offensive repertoire that can shoot threes, finish around the rim, has some post work, is able to go coast to coast. Like, this dude, when you talk about potential to be like, when you talk about a unicorn, that's really what I was going to get to. This dude has a potential to be like the one true, like, best quote unquote unicorn we've ever seen. Like, people said that about Kristaps. I heard some people saying about, like, obviously Thon Maker when he was coming in the draft. People use that word all the time, but truly, from what I saw, Chet Holmgren has the talent and the skill to be the best unicorn since they started saying that we've ever seen coming in the draft.
Yeah, he shot 40% on all his no dribble this year in college. That includes a couple of long twos as well as threes. He's not yet an elite shooter, right? But if you're hitting 40% on those jumpers and just keeping people honest on those pops, whether you're in the pick and roll or whether you're kind of spacing out the floor, you've got an offensive weapon already, right? You can keep him on the floor. You don't have to worry about him getting played off. Finishes with either hand, like you said. The finishing numbers are obscene. 57 dunks, never missed a dunk. 125 shots at the rim, shot 84% at the rim. Again, this is the guy where the concern is that he might be too weak or whatever. He finishes with length. He finishes with great extension. He's balanced. He's got great touch. For all the concerns people have, just kicked butt on offense. It's he can handle the ball a little bit, not a half court ball handler, but certainly maybe like a rejecting a dribble handoff kind of thing. You've got an open lane to the rim, a good passer, not a special one yet, but a guy who he can operate in the elbows and throw, find corner shooters and stuff. So if he does get a little bit of gravity, he moves the ball well. Maybe has some short roll playmaking in him. We didn't see it a lot at Gonzaga, but he showed the kind of skills that you'd want to see in a short roll playmaker. So on one hand, you've got this great defensive prospect. And then on the other, you don't have to worry about just shoving him in a corner or getting locked into one way of playing offensively. He's got a couple of different tools to work with.
All right. So when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about some of his strengths because there's some other things I want to mention. And then eventually we'll get into his weaknesses. And I'll just go ahead and give you guys a little preview. My one weakness for him literally just centers around one thing. I think we all can take a guess at what that is. But we'll talk about that when we come back. First, I have to tell you guys about you guys' favorite sponsor, Built Bar. The best thing about Built Bars, they're healthy and they're delicious. No more sacrificing delicious food for health. With Built Bar, you can have both, and it's really that easy. All you have to do is go to Built.com and order now. All Built Bars and Puff Bars are covered in 100% real chocolate. That means that with Built Bar, you can eat healthy and actually enjoy it. Have you guys even tried the Puffs bar yet? We are going crazy for the Puffs. They come in crazy flavors like banana cream pie and even churro. Who doesn't want a protein bar that tastes like a churro? And they're only 140 calories. Sign me up. If that's not enough flavor for you, then you might want to take the mix box. The mix box comes with 12 different flavors of bars and puffs. Built Bar knows that there is something for everybody. Know what my flavor is? You guys already know what it is. Peanut butter. And like we've mentioned many times before, there's coconut, lemon, raspberry, strawberry, blueberry, literally any type of flavor you can think of, Built has it. And if you're constantly checking out Built.com, you will see that they're having basically a limited time flavor every few weeks, it feels like. So again, go to Built.com to get all your favorites. Again, like I mentioned, banana cream pie, raspberry, double chocolate, and so many more. They're all delicious and new flavors are coming out all the time. Check them out at Built.com. So again, go to Built.com, use promo code LOCK15, and you'll get 15% off your order. Again, go to Built.com, use promo code LOCK15, and you'll get 15% off your order. Built Bar, the best tasting protein bar ever. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We are free and available on all your podcast platforms. And if you haven't already, head to our YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button. I'd really appreciate it. But let's go ahead and get right back into talking about Chet Holmgren before we get into some of his weaknesses. I have a few more things I wanted to talk about him offensively real quick. I think he can be used as a lob threat in the pick and roll. I don't think he's going to be like Blake Griffin or something that's soaring through the air gracefully and all that kind of thing.
Graceful is not the Chet word.
Yeah,
that's never used for Chet.
Yeah. So I don't think he'll be doing that, but I think he 100% can finish around the rim and be a lob threat for you. Hal Kahn mentioned it right there. He doesn't miss dunks. So if he gets around the rim, he's able to get up off 2 feet. He's likely going to finish it if he can get around there, or he'll get fouled. So I think he can operate as a lob threat in the pick and roll. He's shown potential to be a pick and pop player as well. So I think really, I wanted to mention the pick and roll threat and the lob threat because we've talked about that kind of thing a lot in the Pistons Locked On Pistons podcast. I feel like that's kind of been my big catchphrase. I want lob threats, lob threats, lob threats. So I think he can fill that in. And also, Hal Kahn mentioned to it, he's a nice passer. He's not like an insane passer, but he's definitely a capable passer who's able to, like you said, make passes from the elbow. I wonder if he'd be able to run dribble handoffs in the NBA for the Pistons. That's something I'd like to see if they did draft him. I don't know about that. You probably would have better idea of that. I don't know if he would be able to. I question whether his frame would allow something like that. But either way, I think while he's a monster, like a pure monster defensively, I think he has just as much potential offensively to be a real superstar in that end. Like a legit, again, I said this already, but a legit unicorn, like an actual unicorn, not just saying it because he's tall and talented. Like this dude has a chance to be like, for me, the first legit unicorn and go out there and be a legit superstar. That's the potential I believe he has.
Well, we've had unicorns before, right? Kevin Durant exists.
Well, the people
Kevin Durant.
were they using
Whew,
unicorns back then?
no,
Fair
but
enough.
boy was he. 7 feet tall, shooting the three like that, handling the ball like that, crazy. Uh, and I think a good example, right, of a guy like Chet isn't Kevin Durant, first of all, but physicality, right, and we move on towards some of the weaknesses. Kevin Durant, especially in that stint with Golden State, was like a Defensive Player of the Year level defender, right? Just awesome in rotation, swallowing guys up with length. Didn't matter that Kevin Durant couldn't bench press literally a single rep at the combine, right? Famously couldn't do that, came into the league as a shooting guard, still had an impact. So just something to keep in mind when we talk about these unicorns is our conventional understanding, right, of what an athlete should look like doesn't apply to everybody. You talk about, we'll talk about like screening frame. Well, Chet's not a wide body and he's not a very heavy guy. But what Chet can do that most people can't is like move the ball around, side to side, etc., and give you a dribble handoff where like the handoff radius, Megatron's catch radius, right? It's just an insane amount of space where he can distribute the ball, angles he can play because he's so much taller than everyone, right? It's a little bit like playing with a Boban, where there's some like of those like over the shoulder passes and stuff that you see like a Jokic do that are only available to guys that have good passing vision and that kind of height because I'm 6 foot tall. If I try that, I'm gonna hit you in the chest. Like there's some people that can just do that. You mentioned the lob threat. I think it's important to remember you don't have to like throw it down with authority, right? As long as you can get your like elbows above the rim, and Chet can because he's that tall, like you're a lob threat. It's going to be fine. You don't have to be, like you said, Blake Griffin. And if he can open up space for himself to roll because people are afraid of the pop, etc., he can be a guy that can hit you from multiple levels, right? He can be a pop threat. He can be kind of an elbow threat. He can be a rim running threat, and hopefully a short roll playmaker. I do think the one weakness is his first step on that roll is not great. He does need a little bit of time. It's really that second step where he gets more of his like athletic pop to come through.
All right, so since you mentioned some of his weaknesses, let's go ahead and start talking about them. And I apologize if you guys can hear my dog in the background barking. I don't know if you guys can or not, but I can hear her. Either way. So listen, his weakness, I have it. I typed it literally 3 times in my notes. Strength, strength, strength. Now, look, I'm all for the talented guys. I'm all for guys got to put strength on when they get to the NBA. They're going to be having NBA training, diets, etc. So you expect them to get bigger and adjust to that kind of thing once NBA trainers and staff get a hold of them. But man, listen, this dude. I'm not going to lie to you guys. When I was watching him play while I was writing down these notes, it felt like each time he had the ball in his hands or did something, I winced because it looked like he was going to die. It scared the hell out of me every time he had some physicality happen to him, or he fell to the ground, or he jumped. Like it was scary. I can't lie. Every single time I thought he was going to get hurt. He didn't, but it looked like he was going to get hurt every time. And I heard Hal mention earlier, he compared him kind of to Evan Mobley. This is something I wrote down here as well, is that, Evan Mobley, when he was drafted, at least from the draft profile that I saw, going into the draft, he was at 215 pounds, over 7 feet. Chet isn't even at 200 pounds. So people were saying that Evan Mobley was small. He had 20 pounds on Chet's. Go look at a picture of Chet. Chet literally looks like a toothpick. Like it's scary. And for me, that is something that legitimately scares me to where I would question drafting him if it was me. I know Hal disagrees. Hal will give the counter argument, and that's fine. However, for me, it's just like that's just it's just really scary, man, because he plays. For example, Hal brought up Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant doesn't play center, so he's not having to go down there and battle with Joel Embiid, Jokic, blah blah. Chet is playing big guy. He's going to have to battle with these guys, and I don't see how that's happening at 195. Obviously, the plan is that he's going to get bigger, obviously. But, another guy that I heard people say that a lot about, and I've said his name already on the podcast, Don Maker. They said he needed to get bigger, and by the time he left the Pistons, he was a little bit bigger, but he wasn't like it was too much of a difference because he was still getting knocked around all over the place. So the strength is really a concern for me because I just don't know if in the NBA, like we mentioned earlier, he's able to finish around the rim with both hands. It wasn't bothering him in college. However, in the NBA, it gets more physical. Guys are stronger. Guys are bigger. Guys are just as big as you, kind of stuff. And I wonder if then once he gets to the NBA, maybe it'll start to lock him off a little bit more because of how much more bigger everybody's going to be, especially when it goes against guys like I named. And then also defensively, his timing's still going to be there for help side blocks and all, and like guards going to the rim. I think that will maintain. I think that can stay. However, I question whether he'd be able to really check on legitimately any center that has like strength on him like that. Because 195 is just like, it's so small to me. Like, dude, we're talking about under 200 pounds at 7 feet. It's just really scary to me. I'll let Hal, though, come on and give you guys reason not to be worried about it and be positive. But as of right now, it really does scare the shit out of me. I'm not going to lie.
Okay, so a couple things. First, 195 is the weight we were given at the start of the season, right? He could come into the combine and measure at 210. I do know that his senior year of high school, he was being listed at 175, right? So even if he is ridiculously skinny, and he is still gaining weight. I don't know that he has like a lot. You'll hear a lot of people talk about like whether his shoulders can support a lot of weight. Like I don't know that he's ever going to be 250, right? That's it. Like the Giannis kind of glow up where you go from like 195 to like 245, probably out of the question. Can he get to 225? Is 225 enough? I don't know. The biggest question is less to me about can he put on weight and a lot more about what are the risks health-wise to putting on that weight, to putting on a dramatic amount of weight in a short period of time, right? That's how a lot of guys get foot injuries and all sorts of stress issues. That to me is far more of a concern than whether or not he's going to get moved around in the NBA. Maybe he can't guard Joel Embiid when Joel Embiid really decides to post up. I'm not really going to worry about that personally, and I think frankly it's a little overstated. Usually guys like the post ups we see are mismatched post ups, right? Guys like big guys really just destroying little guys on switches. We don't really see the big to big post anymore. It was never efficient. It's not very efficient now. And usually it's actually guys being beat because their feet are bad. And Chet's feet are awesome and his length is great. You don't see guys rooting people around in the post anymore, crab dribbling guys back. It doesn't happen. And if you do get into Chet's body and you try that, we saw that multiple times in college. He just stood over people and drowned them out. There aren't people in the NBA that are as long as him. Like maybe Boban is going to beat him up, but like I'm not worried about people playing Boban against him for long periods of time. To me, the biggest question is how does the frame impact him from an offensive ceiling? I'm not worried about him defensively. How does it impact him offensively? We talked about like he has a bit of a handle in transition, right? People probably saw like the highlight clips of him going like behind the back and then dunking on people. It's really fun when he's in open space. He can't dribble through any kind of contact, right? That's a place where he's too tall to have like wiggle, so to speak, right? He's just not going to get slippery and get by you. What does that mean if he can't drive, right? If he doesn't have much of a face-up game because he can't get off his spots, where does that leave him from an offensive ceiling standpoint? That probably drags him down, right? His elbow threat. If you're not able to pressure the rim from the elbows, you're not going to get as much gravity when you're trying to make those elbow passes. As a post-up player, he can definitely destroy, switch, right? If you put a guard on him, he's going to finish over him. He loves that. But Joel, that's much more of a concern is the other centers guarding him. What can he give you offensively down low? Probably not much. I'm much more concerned about the frame from that standpoint than I am from defense. We've seen a lot of guys make it in the NBA, like Manute Bol, for example, played in one of the most physical eras of the NBA and played all of it at like 205. When you have that kind of length and those kind of instincts, usually it doesn't matter. Chet's so good at moving his feet. I would be more concerned about it if he had like an injury or something that really broke, his rhythm defensively and had to like make him rebuild how he moved. And I think the biggest concern is that he is so small or so skinny rather that like there are going to be injury concerns and they have to be managed by somebody. And you really cannot have a coaching staff that rushes him a weight gain program and puts him at risk because he will have a foot injury or something or a leg injury like that. That's exactly what got Joel Embiid and so many other big men.
Fair enough. There's your guys' reason to not be worried about it. You guys got my side. You guys got Hal's side. When we come back, we'll talk about whether the Pistons should take him if they have the opportunity, and we'll also talk about why maybe they shouldn't take him if they like someone else or whatever reason. We'll talk about that when we come back from the ad break. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We're free and available on all your podcast platforms. And if you haven't already, head to our YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button. We're all on our way to 3,000 subscribers. I'd really appreciate it. It's the best way to support the podcast. So again, Locked On Pistons YouTube channel. Hit that subscribe button. I'd really appreciate it. All right, so Hal, right now in these mock drafts, I see the Ringer has them at number 3, ESPN has them at number 1, and Tankathon has him at number 1. I don't know if you have a big board yet, but do you believe where would you have him ranked, just off the top?
He's number 2 for me.
Okay, who's the one that you have ahead of him?
Paolo.
Nope,
Paolo Banchero, then Chet for me.
All right, so fair enough. So if the Pistons, so obviously that means if the Pistons got number 1, you'd want them to get Banchero over Chet then, correct?
Yep. Wouldn't complain about either, but I'd go Paolo.
Okay. All right, so Hal, tell me why the Pistons, let's say if they're at number 2 and Paolo's gone and you got some of these other guys that are around that we'll talk about in the future episodes, why should the Pistons take Chet over some of these other guys that will be there?
It's so easy to see the fit and to build around him, right? The center position, I think, often gets overlooked because we're often told, right, that it's a lower value position in the NBA. And in reality, what people really mean is that the replacement level is so easy to find, but to find a truly special center that can like actually go in the playoffs and give you kind of utility, right, that unicorn defensive utility, that's really rare and it's really expensive, right? Even someone like Rudy Gobert is worth $40 million in the NBA, and that's with all the complications that come with Rudy Gobert. To have someone like Chet on your team where you can build a whole defense around him, you know what you're going to get on that end. And then the fit with someone like Cade Cunningham is pretty seamless, right? You got a pick and roll finisher. He can play off another big if you want to play him next to someone with a little more pop athletically. You get a floor spacer. It's just really, really easy. And then if he does end up developing some of those extra tools, if he does develop, into a better shooter, can shoot off some movement, or if he puts on enough weight to like get a kind of a drive game going, that might be the highest ceiling player in the whole class. There's, but I think it's just so easy to fit him in and get something that the Pistons currently do not have on their roster, period, right? It's a totally unique player from what they already have.
Yeah, and that actually was something that I pretty much wrote in my notes, is that they don't have a guy like Chet on the roster, and it's exactly what they've needed for why they should take him. That's my argument. They have a guy. They would get a guy who's able to provide an interior presence and some pressure at the rim offensively without completely giving up defense. Like, they got that with Marvin Bagley, but by doing that, you're giving up defense because Marvin Bagley is awful at defense. And then with Isaiah Stewart, you're getting the interior presence defensively, but you're giving up completely offensively. So it's like the Pistons have had to pick between two for 2 years now, and probably you could go a few years back, even before then. Chet Holmgren would instantly be able to provide you defense as long as my concerns about if Hal's correct and my concerns about his frame and his weight aren't actually issues. He would be able to provide you an interior presence defensively, be able to run pick and roll coverages with you defensively, while also being a rim pressure and a rim presence offensively. And like you said, he might have the highest ceiling in the entire draft. And you guys know last episode we talked about Paolo Banchero. Obviously, at that point, I'd only looked at Paolo Banchero, but I really loved what I saw from him, and I was talking really highly of him. I'm sure my opinions may change as I go through more guys. Right now, I'm not. I like Paolo more still from what I've seen, simply because I'm still just worried about his frame. It just really does worry me. So I like Paolo over him, but I definitely see the highest ceiling in the draft kind of thing with Chet, and I can how about this? This is the best way to say it. I can very clearly see a future, like I can picture a future in my head when this dude's like just a repeat all-star over and over, and like potential defensive player of the year over, while also being a tremendous offensive player year in. Like I can see that future happening. However, I'm just so scared of the frame. I can also see him like getting hurt in year one, knock on wood, and just like not being this. Like it scares me. So that's why the Pistons should take him.
I think the other thing to mention, just real quick, is that the Pistons have like a timeline that's very forgiving, right? So they can bring him along slower, right? They don't have to throw him out on the floor and demand, 35 minutes of abuse while trying to put him through a really fast weight program, right? They have 2-3 years. He needs to be the player they want for 7 to 10 years on the team. They've got that flexibility that he may not have on some other rosters. And I think a coaching staff that's been pretty good about that so far.
So I want to just get a quick answer out of this because we still have another thing I want to talk about. But you brought it up just now. It actually kind of shocked me. So I feel like a lot of people, and I'm not going to lie, including myself, feel like the timeline actually was accelerated because they got Cade. I feel like Cade's kind of putting pressure on the team. Not like, when now I'm leaving kind of pressure, but like just having Cade Cunningham kind of puts pressure on your team to like try to start winning some more games. So you don't think that? You think they still are under the timeline of we still have time, we can take it slow?
I think you're still on the timeline. Like, think about like the Bulls when they get Derrick Rose, right? They barely miss the playoffs. They get Derrick Rose with the number 1 pick. That team wins 41 games, then 62 games, right? They're only a mediocre team for 2 years before they really explode. And it tends to go that way even with teams that have like a good core and then they add the big piece. It often takes a season. It often takes 2 seasons. For the Pistons, you've got Cade, which is really good, but to really get an established core that plays together, that knows how to win together, you're not really looking at trying to be the final version of that team for another like 3 years. Now I don't mean to say that they're going to just like tank the crap out of next year and the year after that. They might win 36 games and they might try and win 40 games. But they're not going to, those are going to be seasons where if you win 36 and 40 games, we're all going to be ecstatic because that means that we're making the progress we need to make. They're not going to be disappointments, right? It's not going to be a disappointment next year if you win 35 games. That's good. That's great. And so, if you're playing someone like Chet, and bringing him on slowly, and it's, Chet third season, that coincides with, Cade becoming an all-star and like all that coalesces together, that's where you're going to see, a big leap. And I think that fits the timeline pretty well.
All right. Fair enough. All right. Well, let's answer why the Pistons should take him. What's the argument against Chet if you had to make one against taking him number 2, even though he's number 2 on your big board? What's the argument against him if the Pistons did have the number 2 overall pick and Paolo was gone?
So right now your big man rotation is pretty full, especially if you plan to bring Marvin Bagley back. So finding minutes for him if he's not totally ready yet is going to be a bit hard. You might not take him if anything like medical pops up. You might pass on him because you have you think the priority is shot creation, offensive, just offensive generation in general, right? That's not what you're getting for Chet. Chet is going to be the guy that your like on-off numbers look great with Chet on the floor, but he's not necessarily going to be a guy where he's just going to drive a positive offense for you right away. That's the thing down the road. So if you're like, hey, you know what, we really need that guy next to Cade, you're going to be looking at your Palos, you're going to be looking at your Ivies, or your maybe even your Shaden Sharps. You're not going to be looking at Chet. So yeah, I think if you're looking for something different stylistically, that would be the biggest thing. especially if you're pick one or two and you actually have options.
All right. Well, my reason why the Pistons wouldn't take him is the same thing I've been saying the whole time. Is that you just aren't a believer in his frame making it at the next level, his weight at the next level. You don't believe he'll be able to handle it. And more so, like you mentioned, if something pops off medically or there's something that your training staff sees as like, you want to stay away from this guy, something like that. I think that's the main thing that should keep the Pistons away from him. However, if they're number two, and again, I've only looked at Paolo. I would still take Paolo over them if they got like the number one overall pick. That's who I would want as of right now. But outside of that, I think and this is the thing, and I kind of want to wrap it up. We'll kind of I'll let Hal come back with this, and then we'll wrap it up. I really don't want the Pistons to take a project guy or a guy that may take a few years. I feel like Chet may take a few years to come into his own because I've watched the Pistons take guys like that and then not treat them as such. And it's the most frustrating thing of all time. If you didn't want a project, if you didn't want a guy, I'm not calling Chet a project because he has a lot of talent, but like a guy that may take a few years to come into his own, stay away from those guys because the team has shown over and over again in like the past 7 years for me that they just don't have patience for those guys, and they lie when after the draft. They're like, oh, we know this guy's gonna take him, man. We're gonna be patient with him all the way. And then a year and a half later, everyone wants them gone and they hate them like that kind of thing. I'm just not interested in. I don't want to do that again. So if that's where they believe Chet's at, stay away from him for the sake simply only, not even because it makes sense, just simply for my psyche, because I can't do it again. That's it.
I don't think you're going to have that with Chet. Chet's been like a serial winner, right? A guy who won a crap ton of games in high school, a guy who won a crap ton of games in Gonzaga, a guy who like he plays the way a coach wants him to play, right? Chet is an insanely competitive player, works his butt off defensively, right? He's not going to be a guy where your coach is like, I can't play him because he's not paying attention to my instructions on the floor. I can't play him because he's not giving it to me on defense or he's falling asleep. That's not who Chet is. Chet and Cade together would be, quite frankly, a pretty insane competitive. And Sadiq Bey as well. That's a very serious group of young men you'd have in Detroit. So I think from like a character perspective and kind of how much you'd see like Dwayne Casey buy in to that as a project, I think you're going to get that buy-in. And I don't think he's a project in the way that like, a Sekou was a project, right? That Chet has a baseline that's already going to contribute. It's just so much further ahead than some of those guys.
So my question to you would be, you mentioned earlier like the Pistons big man room is already pretty filled, especially to bring back Bagley. Because how do you think Pistons fans would like react? Just give me what you think Pistons fans would be reacting if they brought back Bagley, then drafted Chet, and Chet's over here opening the season averaging like 20 minutes a game. Like he's playing 20 minutes off the bench or something. He's not getting a ton of minutes. How do you think the Pistons fans will react? And more importantly, when I say
draft is first, right? So draft comes first. So you'd be drafting Chet, then you'd be making the decision on Bagley, right? Because the draft is June 23rd.
Correct.
And I think the deadline for Bagley stuff is like July 2nd or something like that. So you'd know by then as a front office what you want to do. And I think it's probably more likely. What?
Let's say they do bring them both, though. And then Chet's only getting like 20 minutes a game to start the season. When I say reaction to Pistons fans, I mean my comment sections, my mentions.
Mate, your mentions are going to be on fire no matter what.
but just how you don't think that Pistons fans would be like, get Dwayne Casey out of here, fire him! Oh my God, he was a waste of a pick. We're not even playing him 30 minutes. Like, what's going on? We're playing Marvin Bagley.
It depends what it looks like, but what those minutes look like. But I don't know. I think if you end up with the top pick and you start seeing the Chet flashes, even if you only get those flashes for 15, 20 minutes a night, for the first half of a season or something like that, I think those that they're gonna shut up. Well, at least the ones that have a capacity to shut up. Sometimes your mentions are just gonna be on fire. You just got to deal with that.
Fair enough. All right, we'll wrap it up right there. Let me know what you guys think about Chet Holmgren in the comment section down below, or you can tweet either of us, me at Kuka Hill, or you could tweet Hal at Hal Bridius. Hal, thank you for coming on today, man. I really appreciate it.
Anytime.
We'll be sure to have Hal back on whenever we do the next draft prospect. Let me know who you guys want me to talk about next. I know I've had a lot of you guys talk about this. I'm not going to lie. This dude coming out of high school that doesn't have like any is a Shadon Sharp that everyone's freaking out
Oh, we're
about
gonna
now.
skip right to Shaden Sharp, huh? Oh
Yeah,
boy.
he's the one that I've been getting a lot of mentions about. I hadn't heard about him, but apparently he was the one. He was the one that just recently was allowed to enter the draft, wasn't he?
Yeah. He did like an early commit in December to Kentucky, and then submitted for the draft, and they had to make sure that he was eligible. Yeah, he's eligible. So here we go.
Fair enough. That's the one you guys have been flooding my mentions about. So we might have to do him next. So we might do that. But if you guys are now changing your feelings, you want someone else to talk about, let me know in the comment section down below or over on Twitter at Kuka Hill. Thank you for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We're free and available on all your podcast platforms. Make sure you guys go and make Locked On NBA your second listen of every single day. From the first jump ball to play-in tournament to the last possession of the NBA Finals, Locked On experts take you deep inside the playoffs with insight and analysis affecting all 30 teams. Until next time, I'll see you guys later. Stay safe out there, and peace out, everyone.